So we're here today because we have the first ever LeadingEng Berlin event on our horizon. That's sort of why this group is gathered here today. I'll introduce them shortly. First of all, LeadingEng is on December 6th. I will get to be your host, which I am very honored and excited about. And we also have our amazing panelists today who will all be speaking at the event. And I can't wait to hear from them. And if you cannot wait to hear from them either, and you haven't gotten a ticket yet, we do still have some tickets available. You can find them on the LeadingEng website on leaddev.com. We'll also have the link posted for you later again. And as a special bonus, because you made it here today at, well, whatever time it is for you, and it's probably dark because it's daylight savings time for all of us or many of us. As a bonus for you being here today, we're offering 20% off the standard ticket price for LeadingEng with the code LEBerlin20. That one, again, we'll share in writing. But LEBerlin20, please don't register right now. But if you do, you can also actually do that and still listen to the discussion. It's fine. So LEBerlin20 is the code. I'm going to stop repeating that now. You have until November 23rd to use the codes. There's also still a little bit of time. But today, first of all, we will have about 45 minutes total. And after that, the panelists who are here with me and I will head over to the LeadDev Slack to answer more questions in the LeadingEng channel. So if you're not in that Slack channel yet, there's still time to join. Again, we will meet there later on. While we are still in this panel together, we will actually use the Zoom chat, the Zoom Q&A function. My apologies. So the Zoom Q&A, and please post your questions there. We will take around 10 minutes to actually do live answers from the panelists on the questions that you're posting in the Q&A in Zoom. And then we will also cross-post those again to the Slack channel so we can continue the discussion there and also have the content be a bit more persistent. So share your questions throughout. I will be following those as your facilitator. And then at the end of our discussion, we will have 10 minutes to actually answer you. And I'm always super excited about the questions that come in. So please, bring it. Also, you've got to, keep my panelists on their toes here, please. They have a lot of expertise, and we need to tease out some of that. So with all the logistics, so Q&A in Zoom for your questions, and later on we'll be in the LeadingEng Slack and register for the event with the discount code. These logistics we're done with, and now we're going to do some introductions. My name is Lena Reinhardt, and today I'm joined by 4 panelists. We have Sarah, Joyce, and Matthias, and I would love to hear a quick introduction from you. And I also asked each of them already to share a little bit about the main context that they have in terms of environments they've worked in, because that, of course, can shape some of the prioritization challenges. So how about Sarah? Would you like to kick us off and tell us about yourself?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Lena. Hi, everyone. So I am currently working as a VP of engineering at Adyen. Adyen currently has about 3,000 employees. And if we are talking about tech, we just had an amazing tech event with about 1,000 people from all over the world. We have offices in a bunch of different places. We brought some people to get together for a tech week where we talked about some of our latest initiatives, and that was super cool. But before Adyen, I've also worked in other different types of companies and sizes as well. I've had my experience in very small startups with like 10, 15 people that failed. I did have other big, small, and medium companies as well. In the last 9 years, I was in Berlin. I worked at GoBiro, N26, Get Your Guide, and all of that has shaped a different perspective on prioritization for sure.
Oh yeah, that's very rich experience. Thank you so much, Sarah. Joyce, very glad to have you. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Joyce Chen. So I'm currently VP of Engineering at Zalando, which is a Berlin-based e-commerce company. So I'm based in Berlin. I moved to Berlin last year in March. Prior to Berlin, I work in USA. So I have, more than 25 years of careers in tech. And with that, 20 years at Microsoft, which is a long time. And then after Microsoft, I spent 3 years at Nordstrom, which is a US-based luxury company. So I've been through the tech industry for a long while, a long career looking back, and prioritization at different phases, going through different high and low, downtime, internet bubble, all those stuff. So that's my experience. And moving to Berlin create another map of interesting experience on cultural map, from US working culture to a European working culture. So anyway, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to share my experience, in this panel. Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you, Joyce. Yeah, there's a couple different beasts of work experience that you have there. Well, now, and lastly, but not least, my former boss, Matthias. Would you like to take, what's your experience and what do you do now?
Sure. I'm Matthias. I'm hailing from Berlin. I'm a founding partner and now executive coach at a company called The Intentional Organization, where we're also working on a handbook for building and shaping companies for founders, executives, and senior leaders with the same name. Ideally, hopefully out due next summer, 2024. Myself, I'm a former engineer, a founder of several companies. I've worked as founder and CEO at a company here in Berlin called Travis CI, together with Lena. Later on in my career, I worked as a CTO, and now I work with other founders, mostly the technical kind, mostly CTOs and senior engineering leaders. My own experience lies in early stage startups and also growth stage companies, which is where my experience in leading and advising lies, and where also my personal sweet spot for coaching is. I also just a happy coincidence for today. I'm also one of the experts behind the new LeadDev column, which launches today, where me and my co-columnist Mariana Tala provide coaching and advice to challenges that folks in the community are facing. And you can find us in the new community corner on leaddev.com, and we're open for submissions too. So do send us a challenge you're facing, and we'll respond anonymously, of course.
Very exciting. Thank you so much. Well, so far we have about, I did the quick math, I think about 70 years in the experience in the industry, and in about any company you can think of. So my little addition to that is I'm Lena Reinhardt. I do organizational development and executive and leadership coaching for engineering leaders, and a lot of management trainings. I used to be VP engineering at Circle CI, Travis CI with Matthias, and a couple other companies, and was a software as a service startup co-founder and CEO as well. And my main work is really in helping organizations navigate and thrive in complexity and succeed in it. And prioritization is a big part of that complexity. And so I'm excited to dive in with our experts today, because you've probably been there. I've definitely been there many times. A big chunk of my work has been in early stage startups as well as scale-ups and a couple of corporations. But everything is important at all times. Here are our top 10 priority areas. Here are the top 5 focus, or our 5 focus areas, are things that many of us have probably heard, or maybe even, I'll just admit, I've also said some of that at some point, because it was the truth. And prioritizing amid different responsibilities and a constant stream of initiatives that are all labeled priority 1 or of course priority 0, really is a tough balancing act. And the day-to-day maintenance work compared to high impact projects, then I used to run product engineering departments quite a lot, where the whole question of how do we balance our feature work and our sort of customer-facing new investments with maintaining our technology is a classic struggle/battle. And of course, right now, a lot of companies are facing even more challenges with prioritization, with having done layoffs in the workforce, having to achieve goals with less. I won't say the same goals, but achieve goals with less. And so being able to actually prioritize right now is even more important. So I think this is a really important and very timely topic, and honestly one that I've struggled with a lot as well. So I'm curious to learn from the three folks who are here today. Maybe I'll have one or two nuggets to share too. We'll mostly cover well, first of all, some principles, values, approaches that we've used, but also a lot of practical examples. And so I'm very excited to dive in. And I'd love to, like with anything in leadership, I find it useful to start with setting a little bit of context. And so the context I'd like to begin with is just my first question to all of you is, where are we at now in the sense of like, what is different now when it comes to prioritizing managing expectations with stakeholders and all that compared to just say 5 years ago, because we've all been in the industry for a while. I'm sure many of the other folks who are here as well. What has changed in the way that you think, and what do you think people need to think about differently? Anyone who wants to go
I can
first.
start.
Yes, Joyce, please. Thank you. We love some courage.
I think everybody's
Also not a
being
trap
polite.
question.
So when I was thinking about this and looking back career, right? So really right now, the resource allocation, why prioritization is so critical is the resources are limited, and we are not at the environment where we actually have plentiful resource. Actually, my company and we were retrospective. We say 3 years ago, 4 years ago, our complaint is about we couldn't hire fast enough. And we thought that was the biggest problem. But now we were like, okay, that was a luxury, right? So really the resource allocation, and for the e-commerce business, the supply chain management. The supply chain is another critical thing that we also need to come into a picture, right? And then there's also, when you look at when the environment are tight, you think about innovation, right? The company long-term projection, short-term projection, prioritization also need to come in for innovation. And also, even more critically, for microeconomic, right? The customer behavior, because they changed so much for this environment compared to 3 years ago. So those, and then now I'm Europe compared to US, the regulations. That's another huge prioritization compared to 5 years ago. The regulation, how everything become, I don't know the right words for it, so I'll leave it. Everybody get what I'm trying to say. So for me, those are what have changed. Yeah.
It's
I'll
huge
pass to,
complexity.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. No, sorry.
Yeah, I think on additionally to that, just complementing a little bit, because I think that also Joyce covered a lot. The regulations for sure, they have become a little bit more tight on how they are enforced, and how we need to actually consider compliance in so many different types of businesses. But also, I think that investors also have been now a little bit less forgiving of waste. I think that before there was way more room for just shooting everywhere and seeing where it lands, the best thing. And now we have to have a lot more purpose, and we need to really have some more structure and good idea on why we are pursuing an idea, more than just let me see if it lands.
I love that. Yeah, Matthias?
Well, I mean, I concur with everything that Sarah and Joyce have said, which probably, I should add something to that. I feel compelled. I've been thinking about this, like leading up to this. I've drawn diagrams on prioritization, on building a process, which is just something that I do apparently. And I came to the conclusion that from a certain angle, nothing has changed at all in terms of prioritization. If you think about like prioritization as a process, as a decision-making thing, that assuming we had done 5 years ago, then we could still use those frameworks today. But as Joyce and Sarah have already established, like none of that maybe even needed to happen. It was easier to, well, try to shoot for everything just for the sake of growth, and also trying to keep everybody busy that just came and flooding into the company, all those new hires, just seeing what sticks. And that's the only luxury we don't have anymore. But I guess like 5 years ago, that abundant availability of resources, whether it's budget or people, just made it easier to just go for anything that anybody found interesting or thought could move the needle without maybe, or with less validation or evaluation, if that is actually true.
I love that. So yeah, basically fewer spare resources, especially money, to just throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. Higher pressure in terms of actually getting things out, and much more complexity through like tighter regulations, for example, and just having to get things done with those limited resources. Thanks, you all. Like that was, I love the way you just painted the picture of kind of where we're at. So now, of course, the question, like, what do you recommend leaders do to prioritize? And I'd love to talk about this in two parts. Like the first part, I'd love to focus a bit on the prioritization, and then the second part, we can do that separately. Love to talk a bit more than about like managing expectations, because of course, like getting your boss, your customers, your stakeholders, your product peers, all of those folks, getting those on board with how you prioritized. Maybe you'll also need their input, but you can tell me that. But getting them on board with the prioritization is a big part of it. But so yeah, how do I actually prioritize if everything is important? What do I do?
If I may, I will take one step back
Please.
at this and
Yes.
offer a starting point that happens before prioritization. And it's one that comes up in almost all of my coaching conversations and with all the companies that I advise. And I will just put that out there. You need a strategy to give you guidance on what you need to prioritize. It's not, the perfect framework to tell you exactly what needs to happen, but a strategy, a good strategy that gives a sense of direction and gives a sense of clarity, also provides a sense of what you're going to do, and also even more importantly today, what you're not going to do. And I think even though it seems stressful and like all of these pressures exist, my advice to begin with is still to start building a strategy, as rudimentary or as small as it is, that provides you a guidance level of framework. That makes a lot of the decisions and discussions that happen down the line, say throughout the next year, ideally a lot easier and maybe a little bit less contentious.
Yes, love that. So
Yeah.
like have an idea, have a direction, strategy. Thank you, Matthias. Joyce, go
Yeah,
on.
so I want to add a real example. As my company is going through planning cycle, and I know it depends on your size of company. You might do quarterly planning, month, whatever planning you're doing, right? So aligning with what Matthias said about strategic. First thing is the company need to define, or the leaders, we all need to define what is the strategic themes. Then for each project, of each effort that we want to do, we start saying, are these fit into the strategic themes? And of course, these themes cannot be 100, then that would be meaningless, right? So it's a very limited amount, and each strategic theme has the KPI and what it's trying to achieve. Then the project, as you prioritize, you start knowing what's in, what's out, right? Then with each strategic theme, you start prioritizing based on the KPIs, the impact, whatever the tools that you apply. So these really help a lot with the real life example I'm going through now, planning for the next quarter, whatever, right? So that's the real example that my company is going through now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think adding to that on how we make this decision. So, of course, I think that the frameworks are kind of the given, right? They are there, but as Matthias said, like before you actually start applying those frameworks, you need to know which direction are you going to, because that's how you're going to evaluate also the impact of what you're going to do, if the impact is actually aligned with where you want to go. But I think that two things inform the decisions that you're going to take. One is, where do we want to be strategic wise? And also, who are we? What is our culture? How do we make decisions? What is important for us? What is our DNA? And I think that this is for me, the second part of the decision-making point.
I love that. It's like the one, like having a very clear goal, or like direction, idea, strategy, however you want to frame it or create it, but then also actually like having a clarity on your values. Yeah, Joyce?
Yeah, and I want to add engineers day-to-day prioritization that will happen, especially right now, Cyber Week, it's upon us. So for example, for production incidents, right, happen, there's normally, or as I know, a lot of companies will practice the post-mortem, process, and, really look at, the 5 whys, and also have the immediate action and follow-up action, right? So this, in a way, is a prioritization, right? You need to prioritize what are the things you must do, require action to prevent incidents recurring and close the incidents, right? Then you have follow-up actions. It really is about improvements. So these are really day-to-day, right on our face as engineering organization. You need to face these prioritization. And I think the templates and the format and asking these questions are really helping in a way to prioritize.
Yeah, and I love the call out also around like the whole question of like, what problem are we trying to solve? What strategy are we pursuing? Like those very kind of, they may feel basic, but they are oftentimes shockingly effective, because it often turns out not everyone knows these answers, but they're really important to actually get to the bottom of. And I was also, from Joyce, what you mentioned just now, I was reminded that one thing I keep telling organizations I work with is that if you're not prioritizing and if you're not making a prioritization decision, it's going to be made for you. It's going to be made for you by lack of team capacity, by running out of time, running out of budget, whatever it is. And so if you're delaying, or if you're not owning and making that decision yourself, it's just, you're leaving it to fate, the universe, whatever is going to make that. And that's not a good leadership approach. What I'd be curious to hear from all of you is that, like, we probably have a lot of like senior leaders here, but not everyone may be able to actually set strategy for the whole company, but actually just, own a certain domain. Like, how do you, if basically the area of impact that I have as a leader is limited, and I don't, for example, have a really clear company strategy that I could make prioritization decisions based off of, what advice do you have for people in those kinds of positions?
I would offer to start building your own, like even, just for your department, for your team, for your team of teams. And that, that you shouldn't build that in isolation. It's, this ties into a little bit into the second question about managing expectations. I think a useful thing to do there to start is to talk to your peers, talk to people around you that you are with your team in some way beholden to, in whatever way that is. I mean, engineering is that organization that technically works for every other part of the company in some capacity. And it can be useful to talk to folks there, to find the folks in your own department or part of the organization that are the hubs, who are the people that other people go to when they have questions, or the people that insert themselves into all kinds of discussions, and ask those folks when you can't, you don't need to come up with an answer for yourself, but it's useful to start interviewing folks, asking them pointed question about how they see the future of the company, what challenges aren't addressed, what risks they're facing, what are unaddressed opportunities, things that, or just what they and their team or department need to be successful. and then put that data together. And well, these days you can just ask ChatGPT to do the work for you, or you go inwards for 2 hours and try to extract what you're seeing in the information that you're getting. And that information, I'm pretty sure you can start turning into a strategy, into a simple strategy that gives you, your organization, maybe five directional objectives, a few approaches that you want to outline for how you want to go about achieving those. And that can be it. That can be the starting point.
Yeah, love that. Thank you. I guess so. Yeah, if you're not getting the strategy, like DIY it. Like it's a good craft project. And if you then put forth your strategy to people and your boss or your peers say, well, we hate all of this, then at least you have a starting point for a conversation, can talk about, well, what makes you hate this? And that actually, I loved also, thank you, Matthias, for the segue into like managing expectations around priorities. Stakeholders are important, but they're sometimes also the worst between us. Oh, actually, I'm realizing this is being recorded, but we obviously love our stakeholders, but they're sometimes, they need management. So how do you manage expectations with peers, your boss, stakeholders? How do you get around we always have to prioritize product investments and never get around to maintenance work, all of those kinds of things, choose your own adventure, but handling stakeholders, tell me about it.
So for me, it's a constant question that come up, and I always have, my organization always has tons of requests, right? So the starting point is I ask what's the impact they try to achieve with this ask, and really clarification question, right? And then also then from there really say, okay, by doing this, what will we not be doing, right? Provide the list for the stakeholder to understand that, right? And negotiate. I really think this is all about negotiation, right? And meanwhile, being able to say all this is because I'm very big on default to transparency, including everything my organization is doing. So we have very consistent, regular communication on what we are doing. So the stakeholders are aware already, what we are doing, and we are not a black box to them. So I think these conversations actually help a lot to clarify, where we are, and then help prioritization a little bit. And then, to be honest, if somebody want to do A and we are trading on B and C, and the leader all think that's the right decision, then let's trade it off, right? So this is what I also see. One of the things I always say is the resource in my organization is not mine, it's the company's. So that's all together we can figure out, there's a reason behind what something become more important than others. Yeah. So that's some principle I've been using. Yeah.
Thank you, Joyce. Just real quick note from me. You can post your questions to the Q&A channel. If you have anything that you'd like us to cover, that was just my quick announcement. Sarah or Matthias, what would you like to add? Thank you, Joyce.
Yeah, I'm going to double down on visibility. I think that we need to be aware that we are going through prioritization. Everyone in the company is going through the same thing. They also need to prioritize their things. They also need to understand their capacity. They also need to understand how to tackle their challenges, and they need to know if you're going to support them or not. So what they need is, yes, of course, their project done, but more than that, they need predictability. That's something that they can deal with, even if you're not necessarily tackling the issue right now. But they need to understand where are they, and they need to understand that they were heard. I think that talking about stakeholder management, we are still talking about people in general. So what we need to do is to manage expectations. They need to feel heard properly, not in a cynical way. They need to see that what they're saying is being considered. And then, as Joyce said, there's a matter of impact, and impact can be measured in many different ways. The impact that it has to operations, the impact that it has to many different aspects of the business. And then you put them together and people can understand, okay, this is being prioritized over that. And that's why I'm not getting this right now. If you basically answer people with, it's not in the roadmap or it doesn't fit in the roadmap, then you just start being that evil engineering side that no one wants to talk to, because you're always going to throw words such as roadmap and prioritization at people. But what they need is actually visibility, not the jargons, but actually to see what they are talking about. Where is it in your plans?
Love that. Like, yeah, no one cares about our roadmap. Like, because like our roadmap is for us, and they shouldn't have to care. That's a great call out. Thank you, Sarah. But yes,
I'm going to triple down on the visibility piece.
Amazing.
No, I mean, my ideal approach and what I generally advise is to get people who have some vested interest in what you're building, whether right now or at some point in the future, to get them into the conversation as early on as possible, maybe in the planning conversation, so that they can feel like they have a voice, right? And adding to what Joyce and what Sarah said, I want to maybe flip the side around to arguing from the engineering side, which is also a great challenge that many engineering leaders face. And actually, Circle CI's CTO, Rob Zuber, gave a talk at LeadingEng at West Coast, and he had one slide where I was just like, that's the one that sums it up. And we're talking about impact in a way, and I think he put it simply as, if you can, arguing from the engineering side, if you want to be able to convince somebody that something you're doing is important, put a dollar amount on it. As much, as wild of a guess as that may be, but a dollar amount is that what allows you to weigh things against each other. It allows you to have maybe a conversation that is grounded in educated guesses, granted, but they're still numbers, right? And you can start weighing them differently, but you're not talking about darlings, or I really want that, or, well, I don't want that, or it's not on the roadmap. When you have, a number on this thing and a number on this thing, and then here's the big rewrite that you've been planning for 6 months that your team really wants to do, and it turns out that the big rewrite doesn't move the needle actually that much, and the risk that that is posed by not doing it is manageable, at least for a longer period of time, you hold off on it. And it brings a sense of objectivity into the equation. And I mean, my advice generally to engineering leaders is to think of 3 categories when they think about their work. One is about making more money. The other is about saving money. Third bucket is about mitigating some sort of risk, whether it's, regulations, GDPR and whatever is still coming up, or fiscal years, or SOC compliance, PCI, all of those things. And the rest is just, can we be more efficient in how we make money, or can we just make more money with what we're trying to achieve here?
I love that, and thanks for a shout out to another former boss of mine, Robert Circle CI. Yeah, the put a dollar amount on it. A quick, very detailed tactical tip on this: if you don't have access to a budget at all times, or a current one, ask your HR or your finance team what number they're using for an employee hour cost. That number always exists in a company somewhere, and you can use it as basically for example, it's over $100 euros currency. You can use that to make a lot of calculations like the ones that Matthias just described. So yeah, if you don't have actual current numbers, use something like this. It shifts the conversation greatly. Love that. Thank you. I love the tripling down on visibility and getting people into the conversation very early. I think is a great call outs from all of you. So like next year is coming up. A lot of companies are still like knee deep in planning for next year. I will say in my experience, I've often started the new year with the planning not actually done, because we weren't able to actually get aligned on all the priorities, for example. What tips do you have for, actually getting planning done so people can hit the ground running once the new year starts?
Sorry, Sarah, you want to start? Okay.
Go ahead. I'll go after.
Okay, so I earlier mentioned that one of the example is the planning. So my company has already almost completed the planning for next year, and we go in the year planning cycle. So it really start off really aligning on the strategic themes from there, and then each organization go from looking at what they think they will achieve from this the strategic themes. And from my organization, because a lot of the markets and the commercial side depends on my organization, so they also have their ask, right? So then we all come together, going through the process on what we think we want to achieve, and come collectively work together on a list, that combined list. So that's the planning that we gone through. And for what I'm seeing as a leader, it's critical for each organization, you know what you want to achieve based on the theme. So it's again about you have a version of what you want to achieve rather than other people tell you what to do, right? And then when other people come in with their list, then you can look at the list. And I think my experience is a lot of time, 50% to 60% of the list is identical. It's identical, and then you debate about the rest. So that's the process that my organization went through and my company went through.
Kudos. Honestly, like overachiever, Joyce. I'm gonna need you to teach me your ways. But I mean, it sounds fantastic. I mean, really, like having really strong alignment. I love also the point you made around, like, if you already have 50% overlap, basically, because you're starting from the same strategy, you're not going to be wildly off. Sarah or Matthias, anything you want to add before we wrap for today?
Yeah, I think so. One thing that's also important when you're two things actually. One is that the strategy, of course, is setting the tone, as we said before, right? The strategy and how we take decisions. It's also important to surface from the team what they think it's important. So I think that one of the reasons why the prioritization process takes a while is exactly because you want to hear this bottom up. You want to consider the strategy, and then you want to hear from all your peers what they consider is one thing. This is going to generate something that you need to validate with people again. And this needs a couple of rounds if you want to consider all of that and how much you want to consider all of that. This is, to me, why it takes time, but it also gets it a little bit more round. But what might also generate some frustration at the end is that final prioritization should be seen, I think, with a little asterisk on the side. This is as final as it can be at the moment with all the information that we have at the moment. And I think that also as leaders, we need to be comfortable taking decisions with not all the information. We never have all the information, and we always wish for more data, but it gets to a point where we have to take decisions, right? Sometimes the data comes afterwards. And I think we need to have some times in which we look and say, okay, hopefully we're in this for the long run. Is this the direction that's taking us where we want to go? And we need to be able to pivot and change. So even when we get the final, it is as final as it can be, I think, especially for this end of the year prioritization for the upcoming year. But I would always see this as an asterisk on the final. It's final, kind of like versioning a few years ago. Yeah. It's final 1, 2, 3.
At some point you get final, and then final 2. Yeah, I have named files this way many times. I'm sad to admit. Thank you, Sarah. And I do, like, one last twist I'd like to add on that is also, like, if you make the work smaller, the prioritization gets easier. We haven't touched on that a lot. And same with stakeholder requests. And like, if the decision, as you just mentioned, isn't here's the thing we're going to spend the next 10 years and $10,000 billion on. I don't know how math works, apparently, but the decision is more, hey, here's an experiment, and we will be able to quickly see if this is working or not. It makes the prioritization a lot easier. So yeah, thank you so much. I loved all the questions. Matthias, did does this just look like you really want to add something?
I mean, I've been, you know,
we've worked together. I know the body. The body
you know
language.
my body language.
Yes.
It's like he's gonna say something. He's thinking about something. And I am. I mean, you just said something that I also always advocate, Lena, is like keeping things small. And I do keep wondering, even, you know, that does planning really need to be such a big deal? Even knowing that there's always an asterisk on it, right? That 6 months down the line, the plan might look completely different. That, you know, we might have learned something, especially in these times where many companies are striving towards profitability, or where everybody's trying to make sense of whatever is happening in the world of ChatGPT and AI and how that impacts everybody else. There are just so many things we don't know even at the beginning of the year. And I don't have an answer to this, but that's what went through my head. Like, is it really that? And that's maybe just a contrarian question that I want to throw in. That planning needs to be such a big thing, or that we can just admit we're going to start, say, with the first half of the year, see what we learn in that amount of time, and work on a small, you know, focus on a smaller piece, for a smaller packet of work, and then we'll keep planning throughout the year, or we reconvene in 6 months. I don't know. That just went through my head as we were talking through this.
Yeah, applied DevOps culture. And talking about learning as we go, I've learned a lot from all of you. Thank you so much for all your insight. We've talked about how complexity has increased quite a lot. There's more expectations on efficiency now on teams, which also means we can't just prioritize and then see what happens. What we kind of need to know a bit more clearly is the work that we're prioritizing actually going to have the impact we're looking for. Focusing on impact actually helps with prioritizing, and also, as we heard 3 times, and I think all three times were worth it because we had different angles on it, visibility really is key in getting agreement from your stakeholders early on, making sure that people feel heard, understanding that your stakeholders are indeed people. And it helps if you give them a voice and you really listen to their needs, and talk in a common language, put dollar amounts or euros, currency of your choice, on things. And yeah, involve people in the conversations early, and then try and get your planning done before the next year. Follow Joyce's lead. I mean, maybe Sarah and Matthias, you've also finished your next year's planning already and just couldn't share it. But get it done early, so you can also, and maybe your prioritization, as we just heard, doesn't have to be as big a deal. Well, but before the next year comes around, we will have LeadingEng in less than a month from now. And all 3 of you are going to give really interesting talks that I'm stoked to hear already. And I'd love to hear from you. Can you give me your 30-second pitch on what your talk will be about, and why people should see it?
I will go first again.
Go for
Sorry,
it.
Sarah.
No, you're great. You were first to unmute.
All right. So my topic is about unlocking lean efficiency, specifically turning knobs where it matters in tech leadership. And why I talk about turning knobs and where it matters, because one of the analogy I have is about, you don't fix all the bugs. You want to fix the one that's most critical. And this, to me, when you have limited resource, you want to put your resource where it matters, that will make the biggest impact. And so this is a key to my heart as I look back at Korea and everything going on. Sorry, this is more than 30 seconds. So anyway, if you want to learn more about this topic, join me, and I'm happy to share with everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, I like how in the beginning we were all shy and now we are all bumping into each other's, running for the mic. Yeah, my talk is about influencing the culture from the driver's seat. So when you're an engineer manager, when you're a tech lead, you are very in touch with everyone in your team. But then you become a manager of managers and you distance yourself a little bit. How do you still make sure that people are taking decisions based on the right values. So I said that one of the values for prioritization is who you are, what your DNA is. And this is very dear to my heart. I see a lot of people sitting in a room coming up with a set of values that are going to be on a wall. But how does it play out on the day-to-day and how it influences how people actually act? Come join to listen more.
Thank you. And you, Matthias?
Well, Sarah said something earlier in the discussion, and I'm sorry, I didn't have time to make a 30-second pitch, so it's probably going to be 90 seconds. No, Sarah said earlier, we had talked about, how you make those decisions around prioritization, that beyond strategy, you need to think about decision making, how you're making those prioritization decisions. And that's what my talk's going to be about, talking about decision making more from an abstract angle. Just to give you maybe some background, preparing for this panel, I started drawing things, and I started drawing just this kind of thing for just to figure out what is the decision making that goes into prioritization. It's like a bottomless pit. I had these these moments, and in my talk I'm going to take everybody through 5,000 years of decision making of humankind, only then to accumulate into a story about me as a young lad, and how that young lad tried to find his footing in making decisions running a company, and then how that later translated in just being more confident in decision making and spending more time thinking about how decisions are made versus actually making them. But I would prefer other people make decisions, and I can only provide all of the frameworks and all of the context they need to make them. That's my ideal world, and that's what I want to talk about.
Fantastic. So we'll have turning the knob, we will have taking the driver's seat, and then we will have other people making decisions for you, which honestly sounds like a great job to me in summary. I'm sure I'm not doing any of your talks justice, so I'm looking forward to actually seeing them live. Thank you so much for being here, to all of my panelists, but also to everyone who was here watching us. We do have 2 open questions still in the Q&A that we will answer over in Slack in the LeadingEng channel. We're already copying those over, so please stick around there. We'll be there to answer. Thank you very much. And please remember, we hope to see all of you at LeadingEng in Berlin in less than 4 weeks. You can get a discounted ticket with the code LEBerlin20. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you in December. Thank you so much for joining, and I will see you there. And well, we will all see you there as well. Thanks so much, and have a great rest of your day.